Yay. Awesome. Hello, everybody. So glad you're here. See so many familiar faces. Eve and I are glad that you're here with us today. Opportunity to say hello in the chat. Today, Eve and I are flying solo. Pam is away. So we're going to be doing all the tech stuff in the background. So if it's a little bit more clunky today than normal, I know that I have all of your grace because you've all done this to do as well. So um, yeah, we'll just give it another 30 seconds or so for a few more folks to find their way. Glad you're here. All right, I'm going to get us started. My name is Michael, and I'm the network manager for RCC. And I'm so glad to see everyone here from coast to coast to coast. I'm in Paris, Ontario, and it's going to be a good session here. I'm so grateful to welcome Eve, who is the executive director of Adama. And Eve, that is two centers together, working together. We have Pearlstone and Isabel Friedman. And Eve comes to us. This is her second of two sessions. The first one was late last year on hospitality. And I know that we're each going to learn even more than we did on the first call. If you weren't here for the first call, that's okay. I will put later in the chat a copy for the blog post, which includes the recording. So you could go and watch the first one, and then that'll make everything make sense. Eve comes from a background of hospitality outside of the retreat world, bringing experience working with Disney and Hilton and other large organizations, and now is applying the work of hospitality management in the retreat world. So, this is a gift to us to sort of be able to cross these worlds, to cross these lines, and to see how this applies to us. And Eve has also worked now in the retreat world for a long time. So we get the best of both worlds. So, Eve, I'm so grateful for you leading this second 90-minute session with us and for your gift of your time. I know you're busy and you're rushing from something else today, too. So, we're just so grateful to be here with you. And I'm just grateful for the times mine and your path have crossed. And I hope others get that face-to-face opportunity in the future. Before I turn it over to Eve, let's just take a moment to arrive here. And I know I need this as much as everybody else. So just put down whatever's in your hand, take your fingers off that keyboard and find yourself in your chair, or maybe you're standing. Put your feet on the floor and know that beyond that building is the sacred earth that each of us comes from, that sustains us. Just take a nice big breath in and feel that oxygen, that air. Just open up those hands, these hands that work so hard for you. Wiggle your toes and just feel your body here. Notice yourself. And let's just take a few breaths in so that we can be fully present to this time. We ground ourselves so that we can interact with this sacred work of hospitality management that helps us welcome our guests that come to our places to do in a large way what we just did in 30 seconds. And I just invite you to open your eyes and look around the room at all of these beautiful human bodies that have found their way here. Eyes of gratitude. You can wave your hands. Thanks, Sarah Lynn. So glad you're here. So glad you found your way. And we're going to jump into this. So, without further ado, I turn it over to you, Eve, and I'm so glad each of you found your way here today. Let's get going.
Thank you so much, Michael. Hello, everyone, and hello to some of you who are already my friends. I can't wait to become friends with all of you as we engage over the next 90 minutes and many, many times in the future where I hope I have opportunities to learn from all of you. I'm Eve Gurian Walkhouse. I am the Chief Operating Officer of the nation's largest faith-based environmental organization. It's called Adama, and we do four things across six different parts of the US: leadership development, climate action, Jewish environmental education, and what we're going to focus on today, the active hospitality and immersive retreating. We run two year-round retreat centers, one in Connecticut called Isabella Freedman, and one in Maryland called Pearlstone. They are year round. They have about 45,000 people as guests who attend. They offer our own programs and our rental spaces for groups to come and host their own retreats. Each of them sleeps over 200 or so and has many, many acres where people get to engage Adam via Adama, people and planethood. Because for us, that's the same. So I'm going to use some of the life experiences in the hospitality industry and really apply them to retreat and guest services and hospitality within retreating for you today. And as Michael just put into the chat, there is a link for the last session where I started on the first elements of hospitality, and I invite you all at some point to check out that link if this is something that you find of real interest. We're going to focus today in two different areas of hospitality. We'll go over and look at some KPIs and how to look at indicators of your success and your growth. What are your key performance indicators? So some KPIs. And then we're going to launch into some hospitality applications for you, your staff, and interactions with all the other humans on your land. If you've been working in hotels in the past, things like 10-5 rule will be very familiar. And if you've never seen this before, you are not alone. Many of us come to the work in our retreat centers because of many different callings, but few of us come because hospitality was our number one reason, and this is our best way to apply it. So please stop me throughout this presentation, and we'll leave time at the end to ask really important questions, because chances are you're not the only one thinking them. All right, so that's the layout, KPIs, and then some key training components today, but I'm certainly open to other pieces. Since I am very hard of hearing and I am reading my closed captions, do me a favor when you want to just add a question, put your hands up, stop me, interrupt me, because I'm going to be looking to see who's speaking. I won't always be able to hear it. Okay, great. Michael, why don't we start into the slides? Great. So when we started the slides, oh, Diana, I'm so happy to see already in the chat that we have other folks in tourism and hospitality. Welcome, colleague. Um, when we started our last session, we started at the beginning of the experience and we're all the way up to the meal. So we're halfway into this dining experience together in this slide. But there's lots of jargon inside the hospitality industry about NPS scores, KPIs, benchmarks, impact, and guest levels of satisfaction. And I just wanted to take a couple seconds now to go through those so that we can all be using the same language when we talk about engagement. Next slide. Okay, so when you think about metrics that you are using, lots of different people look at their financial side and are really comfortable in their P&L statements with what their year over years are or how they're doing in each quarter, how much liquidity they have, what their margins are, earned versus contributed revenue ratios, things like that. People feel pretty comfortable in their matrices on finance. But when they talk about their KPIs in terms of hospitality, people are less clear how they're defining success. So in addition to the finance sides, areas of improvement, operational efficiencies, and guest satisfaction are key areas where people look at them. Some KPIs are general, like you might be talking about um, overall satisfaction with the experience of being with you, but some of them might be very specific, like the difference between RevPAR and RevPAB and your total occupancy rates. If I've lost you, you're not alone. Not everybody talks RevPAR and RevPAB with the same level of interest or agility. So next slide. So when you look at a dashboard for your KPIs in hospitality, I threw together something that you might want to share with other lay leaders. And again, all these slides will be available afterwards. But here is a way to look at year over year growth with deltas and actuals about some of the key hospitality matrices. So you might be looking at bed nights. Bed nights is how many individuals have slept in that bed. So it's not 54 groups this year, but it's 1,700 bed nights, depending on the one individual being there multiple times. So you might want to look at bed nights. Dollars per bed night is an average, just like average group size can be. Number of overnight groups, number of whatever number you're targeting for your best group size in terms of your capacity and your break-even sizes, your average stay length, and your average contract size. I'm going to pause for a sec. Is there anybody here who, when you look at those KPIs in hospitality, thinks, oh, I wonder why it matters what your average length is, or I wonder why um, you would focus on that, or are there ways in which you might want to increase those? Does anybody have any of those kind of questions about these metrics before I move on? Cool. I love it. Okay, so it sounds like you are all digging into hospitality. There are strategies. If your average stay length, for example, is like 2.5 nights and you want to get it to 3 so that you can increase the total revenue of the group, but you also might be able to add in some programmatic components to have it hit more of your educational goals as well. That's just one example. Yeah, I see there's a hand up. I'll pause for a second.
Hey Eve, I'm just
Hey.
curious on the delta. Do you like to use percentage or like the difference?
In the deltas.
Yeah.
So the deltas are straight percentages. And then in the Smarty goals, to be able to make sure that you have an annual goal for the year that is quantifiable, you can put those deltas straight into whatever team is responsible for managing, achieving those deltas. So, for example, if you want to grow your total revenue by $20,000, that's great. But if you want to go about it by increasing your bed nights by 14% in order to get there, you will have already been able to determine how much your average dollar per bed night is and how many bed nights you need in order to get to your revenue goal. That's just an example. Cool. Okay, next slide. Okay, so I mentioned these crazy things, RevPAR and RevPAB. Across the hotel industry in North America, RevPAR is one of the basic ones we look at. And when there's something like a Beyonce concert in your town, your RevPAR is going to go crazy. It is multiplying your average daily room by its occupancy rate. And occupancy is key here. So all of a sudden, you might be able to change your rates, but if you can change your occupancy, the frequency with which people are actually staying in your place, all your numbers change. So more revenue, but you also have more bed nights. You also have more average nights per stay. Occupancy, in some ways, is one of the key drivers, key KPIs. So a lot of people look at their RevPAR, not at how much their average rack rate is. Is it 250 to stay at your place on average per night? But at their occupancy rate, are you higher than 45%? Is that only some weekends in the year? Is it 90% because you're open 3 times? So people look at their occupancy rates to see how much room they have and capacity to grow. Okay, next slide. That's different than RevPAB. For many people in the hospitality industry, we only cared about how many rooms in your hotel because you had 150, 400 rooms. But in many of our retreat centers, we are actually looking at individuals paying their own and multiple individuals in a dormitory style or a multiple um, a single room with multiple beds in it, in which the average of the occupancy isn't just how many rooms you have somebody in, but how many heads in beds. And at that point, RevPAB becomes much more important. I will just a word here, a word of warning. I would not do that against 100% of your inventory. So unrealistic to think the way in which reservations will come. You will have somebody in that pull-out couch or that or two people in every one of your queens and kings in order to get your maximum. Or that you would never have one or two rooms out of circulation in your inventory being held back by maintenance, or you need to have COVID rooms or whatever your situation may be. And you may have some groups where they just want singles. So be careful when you look at RevPAB as opposed to RevPAR. It's better for many retreat centers, but you have to determine the right number of capacity. How many heads and beds is realistic for you in your cases? Make sense? Questions on that? Okay, so how do you know if these KPIs are working? Just like you know when you're doing online social media, you're looking at your click-through rates and inside your inquiries to contracts, you're going to be looking at your conversion rates. What is the quality of a lead that's so good that you can convert it into a contract? So you don't want to just advertise for anybody to use your space if it turns out you only want certain qualified or strong leads, and then you want to convert those leads into sales and contracts. So your conversion rate are certainly going to be ones in which you want to be careful because you could have a really low conversion rate because you have much too wide a marketing strategy, for example. But you want to know your click-throughs, how many people are touching on your ads. You want to know that rev par of your average daily room rate against occupancy, and rev pab, your average daily rate against the number of beds that you're using. Those are a good way to start to look at some of your hospitality numbers for into your marketing and into your sales. Next. Then it's how your guests say you're doing. Completely separate from your data, there's something called the NPS. Can I just have a show of hands? How many people here have a guest survey? Guest survey of any kind. You survey people who come. I'm seeing a little 50-ish%, a little more maybe. Okay. For those who are not yet doing guest surveys, the key reasons why some of us do them is this question. It's a question you've been asked in many other surveys in your life. How likely are you to recommend blank to friends and family? And it has a scale of 0 to 10. Here's the insider's secret. If you have never seen this before, let me teach you. 7s and 8s don't exist. And an 8 is the general assumption that everything was fine. If everything went fine, it met every assumption, and they give you an 8, they're considered passive, and that score doesn't count at all. Everybody who's had a problem, 0 to 6, is a detractor, and only the scores of 9 and 10 are promoters. And you take all of the 0 through 6s and all of the 9s and 10s to average out what your NPS, your net promoter score is. So if you ever loved an experience and you want to signal that back, you want to give a 9 or 10. And if you're getting your surveys and you're looking at what your average is and you are not above a 60, fear not. Across the hospitality industry, 40%, that means of the people who responded filling this out gave you 9s and 10s. Of the 40% is considered good, 60 is considered exceptional, and 70, 80, 90 rare. You might have it for a single retreat. You hosted one special weekend and you get it, but it's very hard across your average of your whole year. And of course, that depends on the total number you're getting of surveys, right? Your survey size will influence your final scores. But in those Smarties goals and your year goals for your organization, you might want to have an NPS score and to know where it falls in relation to other hospitality, hotel, or retreat center averages across the country. So, cool ways to look at how your guests are saying that their experience is. And a secret inside the hospitality industry, the best way to get a 9 or 10 is to have something go wrong. Because only in that moment can you exceed an expectation with how your staff responds to the situation. In general, if you do everything right, you will get an 8. If you need 9s and 10s like I do, you have to deal with real people in real situations and exceed the expectation in the moment where there's tension, which is why training's so important. Before I go on, are there any questions about NPS? How many folks have an NPS score? Anybody have this? Anybody asking it? Nobody. Okay. Might want to consider it. Talk to your teams about whether you're going to introduce guest surveys, whether they're paper, electronic, part of checkout, emailed later, and if you're willing to ask this question to get the feedback. I can tell you our staff at our 2 retreat centers meet every month and look at all of the guest survey data. How was your room? How was the food? How was the way in which we communicated our mission and this score? And then we apply changes in the moment and are nimble in response to try to make sure we can continue to achieve the goals we have for the year. So I urge you to consider an NPS score so that you know how you're doing. All right, Michael, next slide. So if we're done with the meal, the next thing's paying the bill. So I want to just have a quick second here to be talking about um, ways in which you can also be looking at your staff's ability to respond. I see in the comments someone is doing the guest surveys and providing leaders and facilitators with feedback, but you're not yet doing a net promoter score. So an opportunity for you right now to see if that works for you and how you might engage it, and then what you're going to do with the data you're tracking. Cool. All right, next slide. Okay. Hospitality expenses usually come in 2 really big chunks. Your payroll and your COGS. COGS are costs of goods sold. So there's many people that look at their COGS as a flat rate. There's also people who just like the percentages I was looking at before, do it as a percentage of total sales. You can subtract the expenses from your revenue to determine your gross profit, and then build out as a percentage of revenue your food and beverage costs, your equipment costs, contract employees, so that you can figure out what you want to have in your COGS. And the most important of your COGS is your food cost percentage, to know on average how much of the revenue that is in the expense side in COGS is specific to your food. And in the industry, if you're in a 30 and 40% COGS, you're typically in white linen formal dining. And if you're in the teens, early 20s, you're in buffet, you're in much more of a faster food kind of restaurant. So to know where your COGS are for the kinds of food you're feeding people, but also sourcing is important because food is an extension of your mission, vision, and values. And when you are nourishing people on retreat, you are literally nourishing them by things grown on your land or grown by your neighbor farmers, and have an opportunity to be silently telling the story of your mission. My retreat centers have food cost percentages around 23, 24%. That is true all year long, except for the Jewish holiday of Passover. Passover has a totally different COG because we serve one meal. It starts at registration and it goes for 11 days. There is something about that holiday where it is non-stop food. There are 6 or 7 full meals a day, it feels like. There's snacks all the time. There's huge nosh nooks of food. It's an enormous amount. So has a very different expectation in the COGS for that event. Anybody here know what their food cost percentages are? That may be something you want to know, especially if you're in a leadership position where you're looking at revenue or you're looking at guest experiences. To be able to know what your COGS are is something that sometimes your lay leaders are going to want in your P&Ls as one of your expense items to pull, but also a way in which you can gauge how much of your dollars you're investing in the experience and where you're sourcing your food from. and balance between high quality, local, seasonal, farm to table, if those are your values, and whether those then cost more or less. Are you vegetarian? Are you animal proteins? Those all have impacts on your COGS. Michael.
I just wanted to share when I was executive director at Five Oaks, we didn't know what our cost of goods sold was for in the kitchen. And when we finally took the time to figure it out, we realized it was about 33%. And it helped us to trim back a little bit, but it also helped us to focus on what we should be charging. And it turned our kitchen from a loss to either a break even or a profit. And it helped us do other things. So just to take time to do that work really was really beneficial. So I thought I'd throw a practical life experience in there.
Perfect. Excellent. And I heard a couple different things. When you knew it was higher than you expected, you were interested in seeing whether you could bring down the expenses, but you also figured out what your price should be. Totally separate. If this is a percentage of total revenue, if you increase your prices, you decrease this percentage in your COGS. So perfect. Great. Okay. Next slide. Okay, so if we've done the KPIs and a little bit about managing some of the other data you should know, like your COGS and your food cost percentages, the next piece to think about is training. Oh, Francisco, you're asking about what you consider in food cost. Food cost does not include labor. Food cost should be inclusive of all of the food items that are going into the menu. They're going to be produce. They're going to be in your freezers. They're going to be shelf stable. But it should be all of the food. And some people, if they serve alcohol, include that as well. But no, equipment is a different line than food. When you're in your total expenses in your deferred maintenance, you're going to have sections where you're going to be paying every year in order to keep your kitchen's equipment performing for you. Separate questions. Great. So how do you get the staff to be able to communicate your story, have standards of excellence, and be nimble in those moments where there's an opportunity to get a 9 in 10, which is a paradigm shift from thinking the moments to handle difficult people. Same scenario, different way of looking at it. So let's talk about a couple different ways of maintaining your service standards. Next slide. Okay, sometimes people think that guest services are for the people in that front office or the guest services office. They think it is the people who might be serving food or mopping floors or changing linens in bedrooms. Anybody in that could be in hospitality or in sales. I will contend that any human being at your retreat center is in the guest services business because at the moment that they are either verbally or non-verbally visible or engaging with anyone else, they are representing your organization and your commitment to how you show up in public space. So I think training should not just be with your front of the house or front line, but with everybody on your team across all departments, because I think the best practices have the most important outcomes when they are for everyone. Next slide. So the 10-5 rule. Is there anybody in here who has ever walked down a hallway of a hotel or a motel, and it is the moment you're trying to check out with your luggage and housekeeping is in the same hall as you? Anybody had that experience? I just want you to think that experience before I go into this one. You're walking down the hall, that person is either standing by their cart or moving. And there is a moment when you recognize each other, and then there's the moment where they say, "Good morning. Hi, how are you?" And if you have multiple people in the hall, has anybody had the experience where you hear that like 5 times? Hello, good morning, how are you? Hello, hi. That example is the moment those people who worked in housekeeping hit 10 feet and 5 feet away from you. They were all trained with the 10-5 rule. Simply put, 10 feet away from someone, you make nonverbal eye or physical recognition that they are in that space. And at 5 feet, you switch to a verbal sense of arrival. Now, if you're sitting in one place and someone has to pass by you to go to the bathroom, you know it feels funky when you say good morning each time they go and they come back again, right? Because you've had that first greeting, so you wouldn't do it again. So there are moments where it doesn't make any sense, of course. Like if somebody walks past you the 11th time in one day, you're not going to be like, hello, welcome. Glad you're here at Five Oaks. Like it won't make sense. We're not robots. But the 10-foot and the 5-foot physical boundaries have real impact on other people's sense of belonging, not just welcome, but belonging. Those are two very different things. Welcome is when you feel instantly that you are accepted in someone else's space. It's not your space, though. You are welcome means you are welcome in my house. In the 10-5 rule, we change from welcome to belonging. I see you. I am glad you are here in our shared 5 feet. Now you belong. It's a big difference in fundamental training and hospitality to go from the art of welcoming to the art of belonging. And it's one of the reasons why guests may choose retreat centers over more traditional hotel motel places to stay. They want a more personal experience, a more deep emotional connection. They want a sense of ability to relax and build trust, build community. Those things happen when you belong. So, how do you get from 10 feet to 5 feet? They could be walking to you, you could be walking towards them. Either way, when you hit these spaces, you change to a verbal greeting of some sort. There's also a 50-foot component to this. If you have a vestibule, porte cochere, stop at a security guard, people in their vehicles, when they are 50 feet away from your sense of arrival location, will want to have some sort of recognition that they're in the right space. So 50 feet away, you should be able to see a sign that indicates you're at the right location. Register here. Welcome to Pearlstone. 50 feet, that should be visible. It's not physical and it's not verbal because it's not a human necessarily yet. 10 feet, you will physically notice by giving eye contact typically, but also by moving your shoulders and opening up space. And 5 feet, you will say something that lets them know you're glad that you are sharing the space together. Questions on the 10-5 rule? It feels very automatic until you try to learn to do it and have never done it before. It's fun in the beginning to see people get comfortable with it. Are there any examples of trainings you've been at where people have done this before? I put tape on the ground, on the rug. And as people hit certain distances, you get used to where that is. But we actually physically do this training. All right, next slide. As opposed to the 10-5 rule, a lot of people think about when they have a difficult guest, an upset situation, someone is frustrated. They use words like escalating or pinch point or unhappy. When people have that, they tend to use the heart method inside hospitality, and each of the letters of heart stand for the process to be able to um, move someone in that situation from feeling an escalated emotional, angered situation to one where they're feeling handled, supported, listened to, and offered a resolution that either meets or exceeds their expectations. You all must have some strategies you use when you've got somebody upset. Anybody want to give some examples of what they do? Saralyn.
Hi. Um, we usually make sure first that we are using deep listening skills and whole body listening. and not thinking, our own thoughts and our own solutions and getting ahead of ourselves before we really listen to what they're saying the problem is. A lot of times, people make assumptions and then you're starting to respond when you haven't really heard their whole story. So really listening and then making sure that we can't necessarily control their escalation, but we can certainly manage ours and make sure that we're not, responding with like, I'm just immediately triggered because this person is yelling or they're upset or whatever. So just taking it slow and making sure that we're really listening and managing our own reactions so we can see what we could do to solve their problem. So that's kind of how we focus on it.
Beautiful. I love whole body listening as an idea. What a beautiful way of saying that. Alexander, you also have your hand up.
Yeah, this is more personal. I'm new in this sort of retreat center hospitality space, but I really like structured mirroring. I found that to be a really useful tool in interpersonal as well as kind of more formal engagements, which is related to the deep listening piece, which is getting a little kind of more into the weeds of just repeating back to them. What I hear you saying is, and did I get that right? Which gives them an opportunity to then redirect or um, uh, offer clarifications or affirm that yes, no, you heard me correctly. And then like validation and empathy, like I can hear your frustration. I can understand why you would be frustrated given the scenario that you just expressed to me. And sometimes, I like people just need to be heard. There are instances where and oftentimes if they're talking about something that has happened that's not necessarily a problem that can be solved or addressed, that piece might be the end of it. But then I think this was also sort of what you were nodding to, Sarah Lynn. Sometimes the problem isn't the problem. Like they're describing a specific thing, but there's actually something underneath that that's more important to be addressed. And what I just wanted to underscore what you were saying, Sarah Lynn, about the importance of unearthing that so that you don't immediately start going into problem solving mode and miss the actual thing that the person is actually bringing to the table. So I'm reinforcing what Sarah Lynn just said, but I thought that was worth um, underscoring.
Beautiful. And you said another piece I just want to get back to about mirroring. What I heard you say is that correct? Is a really powerful tool to slow this all down. So really beautiful. Andreas, you have your hand up as well.
Yeah, I'll just echo. I think for a lot of the retreats we would work were meditation silent retreats, and so I think what I acknowledged was it was a lot of dysregulated states that people would come in, and so a lot of like the mirroring was really helpful, or even going on a walk with somebody. Obviously, situation dependent, but yeah, a lot of situations of just usually feeling seen and heard, and sometimes space was really helpful.
Yeah.
Of acknowledging and like, do you need time to think about it? And really, I think a lot of it was also where I noticed the issues would usually come up is if the fixer mind was too strong and it was fixing the situation as opposed to like truly listening, like a lot of people were saying. But that dysregulated state and regulating and helping regulate folks. And we, I really found also Roshi Joan Halifax has a really lovely from Upaya Zen Center. It's an acronym called GRACE. And they use it a lot in the medical field, but I found that really helpful too for personal. It's like ground, respond, acknowledge, but a great way to kind of also notice yourself because I think that's one thing too in dysregulated states. Often we get dysregulated in that, and so the best thing we can do is stay regulated and stay grounded.
How beautiful. Just to understand the soul in front of you, the presence you're looking at is someone who may not be in balance and gives us a moment not to come with anger necessarily, but with an understanding. Beautiful. All right, so let's go through the heart method. We can talk through each of these steps. There's some that are similar to the medical field, so I think you might see some overlap as well. Let's go through them. Michael, can you do the next slide? Here means don't wait for them to stop talking so you can begin. I will say culturally in the different cultures have different ways of saying, I hear you because I'm ready to respond. And so hearing isn't the responding. Responding is a totally different portion of it. Hearing is not interrupting. It's giving them space. Empathy is the next one. You're able to use phrases, I phrases, reflecting back phrases. That sounds difficult. I'm sorry you experienced that. I can hear that wasn't what you were expecting, right? Empathize in all of those pieces to be able to understand before we get to the next steps. Historically, in the hospitality industry, people were careful to apologize. I can absolutely understand that happened. And so this is what I'm going to do is empathize to respond in missing apology. But they were told to do that historically because they didn't want to say something that would sound as saying we are liable for damages. In hospitality, if somebody trips on a rug, you can go, oh dear, I'm so sorry that happened to you. But if you say you're the sixth person who's fallen and broken their leg on this exact same spot, you're opening up yourself to a lawsuit. So in hospitality, there's always been a caution in your response systems about apologizing. I am here to say, if you say, I'm sorry to hear that happened, I apologize that that occurred, that's not the same as saying, I am at fault. So I want to increase the amount of ways in which we can add apology to the recipe here. People need to hear it as part of hearing before they're able to hear what you're going to do about it, which is responding. In the best situation, by the time someone tells you it and you've gone through the first three processes, you can say, because I was made aware of this already, here are the steps we have already taken to remediate or fix or come up with a different solution. That's awesome. Appreciate you bringing it to my attention. I'm so sorry that happened. I apologize that was your experience. And here's what we've already done. Does that meet your needs? That's great. That in that scenario, not only do you want to say, here's what we're doing, but the whatever the remediation, whatever the fix is, you want to then look at how can I get that one notch bigger, one step larger? Because if you're really about nines and tens and wowing people and building repeat customers and building people who will then word of mouth about their experience, this is the moment. So how instead of saying, oh, you dropped your fork, I got you a fork. Trade equal. What can you do that elevates the response so that it's not a fork for a fork? It's a fork for something like, here's dessert with it. Here's whatever. Even if you're not at fault, how can you go up a notch and exceed whatever they were expecting your response is going to be? And sometimes it takes a couple things. It can take creativity. Sometimes it can take finances. And sometimes it can take autonomy. Here's what I mean by that. Or can your frontline people who are going to handle this make a decision without first checking with you? What's the threshold? Is it financial? Is it situational? At Pearlstone, we have a whole group of people called managers on duty that run facilities. And if someone is experiencing a situation in their guest room that doesn't match their needs, they have the ability to move them into a different room. Not guest services, not the boss. They can do it right on their own in the moment. I'll get you keys, I'll switch you out, then I'll do all the things in the back of house to make all those fixes happen of who was supposed to move in there, who knows, what do we now need to do? But they can just handle it on the spot. Think about in your systems, your number of staff you have, the number of rooms you have in your inventory. Is that possible? Is that the best approach for you? It may not be. You may only have 3 of one kind of room, and if people move someone arbitrarily into it, you may be looking down a difficult situation tomorrow when somebody else checks in, right? So I'm interested, before we get to the thank you at the end, I'm interested if we can just pause for a second and think about the responses and what are some of the responses you have in your arsenal or you've empowered people in your retreat centers to be able to deploy. Can they go to the gift shop and hand out stuff? Can they give people discounts? Can they comp stuff? What levels can people just handle and based on situations? Who has any of those examples?
If
Eh,
this is Francisco here.
Hey.
It depends because there are in my humble experience, I have found that there are guests because there has been some relationship with you, they feel more comfortable in communicating straight with you.
Mm-hmm.
Eh, and I found that very helpful because and again I love how you put the hard method here because it is important not to overstep one of those elements in this because this is building relationship at the end of the day is key on this. So I will say when those type of complaints, if we wanted to say complaints, came
Yeah.
directly to me, I really try to pay attention to the listening piece. So
Great
many
point.
factors can affect somebody's experience at a retreat center. You know, I think about the weather issue that we are dealing in the area where we are. I am in central Pennsylvania, where temperature has been very cold, and people are not necessarily accustomed to long range of low temperature and all buildings and all, you put it into the mix right there. But having those conversations with the people that are using our facility and trying to be as much as upfront and honest and say yes, we haven't had the opportunity to address this, but thank you for letting us know, and let's work on that, and have a team of people that are ready to work and jump in and be on the same page with you is amazing. So I read this slide, and in the back of my brain there is a an email that I just email exchange that I have with one friend that was using one of my facilities, and I found so useful, you know, not just the information that that person was providing, eh, but at the same time, the way how the issue that they face were presented that allow us, and in this case was directly to me, that allow me to go through this and said, thank you. I am really paying attention to what you are sharing with me, and these are the things that we will do and are doing
Mhm.
to go there. So thank you for putting that together.
You're very welcome. How beautiful. That's lovely. Are there other folks here on the call who, like Francisco was saying, can think of situations that they have been in and are willing to tell each other what they used to respond, what they were able to provide or offer? Andreas, you're up.
Yeah, I can share. I think I was thinking about this, and I think what came to mind too, and I think especially, I loved your distinction between welcome and belong. And I think
Mm,
with multi-night, multi-day experiences, um, I found also, regardless of what the actual response has been, I think what I've seen more powerful in both directions is like the follow-up. Is just kind of because usually there's a relationship of somebody they handled something and then like the next day or a couple days later checking back in with folks, and I've noticed the lack of follow-up or the intentional follow-up has led to kind of making the situation worse or really kind of building that kind of 9 and 10 type of person. Yeah, and I think it's that sense of community and belonging. But yeah.
beautiful. I get that too, for sure. How do we foster an open heart to be able to receive folks in such a way that we can help them go from welcoming to belonging in our space? Yeah. Anybody ever comp someone completely? You did, whatever happened was so egregious, you were like, you get a free ride. I'm seeing a lot of nods. Did your organization back you or did you get some flack? Did you feel supported in that decision? Mm. Now your faces, everybody is not feeling quite so sure. Sarah Lynn, what do you got?
So we have a policy at Guest House that if uh, someone needs to make a decision about comping something, then we're not going to give them pushback. You know, they need to make the decision they feel is best at the time. And if we're giving them, I'll say like tools in their toolbox, so they know, you know, a parameter of what they're allowed to do, that empowers them and then if let's say someone comes and tells me a story and they tell me what they happened with the guest and what they did, and internally I'm thinking like, ooh, that's not what I would have done, or why did we give
Mhm.
away so much or whatever. If it was in their toolbox, there's just no pushback because you have to do what you feel in the moment, and every situation is different. And if you give your staff a toolbox and then they use it, and then you're still correcting them or what I would have done different and all of that, it can be a little demoralizing, and then it takes away their confidence to deal with those situations. So we just kind of have a you know, it is a somewhat spoken policy that's just like we're all doing the best we can. And as long as somebody's not doing something like absolutely crazy and giving away the store, you know, let them do what they think is best within your parameters so that everybody is left feeling positive about the interaction, right?
Great. I love that because in the story you're telling, the guest really is a coworker. You're talking about how we can hear and respond and appreciate a situation that a colleague or a staff member handled and how to
Mhm.
support them in the moment and hear them and why they made those choices and respond with real loving warmth to them, which is a
Yes,
really nuanced and important way of saying we're going to back each other. Yeah,
yes. Yeah, if people
beautiful.
feel that backing, then they're confident.
Yeah, beautiful. Great. So the last part of the heart method is the T, and that's the thank you. And I will say that people rush through this part. They're so waiting for the R, how they're going to exceed the expectations, or is it going to work, or will it diffuse, or is the guest going to be happy, that they want the guest to say thank you before they say thank you. They are ready for the you're welcome. Here's how I handled it. You're welcome for all I did. And they're not as ready for the thank you so much for bringing this to my attention. It's only through comments like this that we will continue to make sure we're relevant, meeting the needs, exceeding the needs of everybody here, and continuing to work on our performance. And as humans, if we make mistakes, we want to honor it. So you gave us an opportunity today, and I really want to thank you for going out of your way to stop and let me know. So the thank you at the end is critical. Where does this conversation happen at your retreat center? I mean, physically, where is this? Do you have a front desk? Do you have a front office? Do you have a dining room experience? Where's this happening? Where are you listening to folks? I'm not seeing hands up, but I think that may be because I asked the question in a way in which all of those are possible. Your guests are going to come to you wherever you are and they see you at any moment to let you know something wasn't right, something didn't meet it. Your job is to have a way to pull them into a de-escalated space. I really want to hear what you're saying. Can we move to over here to this side? Can we move to this hallway? Can we move to this office? I really want to focus on what you're saying and make sure that I can handle everything that we need to do to make the changes here, right? Why are we not having this in the middle of the front lobby? Yeah, probably have seen this. At one point in my life, I worked at amusement parks. I worked for Hershey, and I have seen this. Can you all see it in your mind's eye? Where the representative of the family and the overtired family members are all in the middle of a very busy lobby, and they're loud. And they are in part letting you know their experience publicly because Have learned a behavior that gets them more of what they want in a public space, demanding, loud, upgrade my room, discount. We were unhappy, right? Some of that is performative. So if we're going to meet people one-on-one where their needs are, how can we de-escalate the location so that we can have the conversation to get to the empathy, the apology, the response, and the thank you in a way that we're not doing it performatively. That's not the point here. The point is one human heart to another, not a grandiose spectacle of how your organization will handle this situation for all eyes and ears. So if you can, a good way to have the heart method conversation is not in public space. That being said, I almost never have conversations with guests behind closed doors. I almost never go to my office and shut the door. That is not safe for any individual. But there is an area between the dining room and a locked office that I would use as a place to have this kind of a conversation instead and really focus and give them my full attention. Okay, next slide. I'll tell you more about other things you can be doing. Just like I said, you might want to move out of public space. You might really ask them a scary question, which is, I've heard what's happened and I want to know before I give you any response of what we're going to do, what are you hoping for? What would you like to see as the expectation? You want a bar of soap from my gift shop? I can make that happen. I was going to give you, trip to Europe for two, but you want a bar of soap? Okay, right? So you might sometimes want to ask. Make sure you're exceeding the expectations. I wrote here, get support from your supervisor when needed. In part, the only reason I use that is if you need time. This is so important, and what you're asking is complicated and good. I want to come back to you. Let me figure this out with other members of our team and come up with a solution, and we'll be back. In the meantime, why don't you check in? Let's get you some food. I will come find you in a half an hour. It's a strategy for time because you want to diffuse the situation with time before you want to get to the next parts. Take a breath. Once in a while, we're human beings too, and we get heated. So when in doubt, remember the last bullet, they are going to leave. They will not be here forever. Once in a while, if you are worried you are going to blow up or blow it, you can say, their time here is temporary. I can handle anything for a short period of time. So that you can remain true to the kind of guest experience you want to provide, even if that's not what you're receiving from the other person. Once in a while, I have dealt with really yucky human beings on the other side, and I've tried to remain true to who I am. Remember, they will leave. Okay, next slide. So one of the things that I said before when we were talking about the 10-5 rule is that you may want to change your body movement. 10 feet away, if someone is coming down the hall and you are talking to a colleague, you might want to move your body so that you are now shoulder to shoulder with your colleague as opposed to looking at each other front to front. When you move from this position to this position, you change your body language, you open up the rest of the hallway for guests or staff to walk by. 10 feet is a good time for you to go, oh, I see someone's coming. I'm going to flip to side-by-side conversation. Side-by-side conversations also in the hospitality industry reduce other people thinking you might be talking about them or people that they're with. Some people who come thinking, perhaps people are looking at me. I feel like I stand out. I am a different ethnicity, race, body type, gender than other people in this space. And if you move from front to front talking to side by side, you can diffuse the situations where people feel like you are talking potentially about them. I'm saying goodbye to those who have to go. I'm looking forward to being able to connect with all of you if you have to leave now at 1. We're going to continue on through 1:30. One staff member moves so that the staff are now shoulder to shoulder, not face to face. If you've never had a conversation side to side, I encourage you to get comfortable with those in public space to begin with so that you're not having to move, but you can walk up to somebody on their side and talk side to side with them, leaving the whole space open rather than sitting in your own chairs or talking face to face. Learn to be in side by side conversation. Next strategy. Next slide, Michael. Oh, it doesn't even have one. Okay, I'm going to tell you the next one is about bathrooms. Bathroom, for many of us, turns out to be the number one thing we are asked by guests. Where's the bathroom? I will tell you that there is a hospitality strategy that includes several steps to it, but you need the side by sides as well. When someone asks you where the bathroom is, you say, yes, of course, or you right away, or oh, absolutely. You know why? Because you have not given the direction yet. You've given an agreement, and your body is now moving towards where those restrooms are. So if you were sitting down in a chair, you're now standing and you're next to them. As you move towards it, there is a 5-10 rule that their bodies will be following and moving 5 feet or less with you to get the answer of where the bathroom is without you having to say, follow me or come this way. As soon as your shoulder moves, their shoulder is going to move behind you or next to you. It is incredible the way we can do a nonverbal directional movement with our bodies. You move. Then you can say, because now you are side by side with the individual, they're down to the end of the hall to the left. At which point you stop moving and they pass you and continue walking. So you've sat down, someone has walked up and said, excuse me, where the bathroom is. You don't go, it's down there, and flag it like you're flagging an airplane. It is not a public physical movement. Get up, move, start to go. Of course, this way. You say it's down to the end of the hall because now you're quieter and they're on your shoulder side. Then you freeze, they keep walking. You can go back to what you were doing. I probably do that when we're filled with guests. I don't know, more than a handful, maybe 10 times a day. It is incredible how frequently you will do it. But it is a very different experience for guests than just pointing them. And you can exchange bathroom for where is the dining room? Where is the meeting space I'm going to? Start walking before you give the directions. Is there anybody on this call who ever does this cockamamie crazy hospitality thing I do? Anybody who does it too? Michael does it too. Hooray. It's standard in the hospitality industry. Your body moves before your words give directions. They will feel so supported and held that in that guest survey scores, when it is staff, you will get the 10s. All you have done is taken 3 steps and looked them shoulder to shoulder rather than front. That's all you've done. So whenever you have those opportunities, I highly recommend that you flip from directional information being given face to shoulder and in movement. Okay, so I know there was a lot of hospitality training. I want to pause from all of the slides, Michael, and why don't we just open up and pull the slides down for a second and just have a discussion with folks here about the kinds of hospitality training you are already doing. Are you integrating any of these things? Are you doing something very different? What are your intentional trainings around hospitality already? Who's got some great examples?
An example I could use is so at Five Oaks, spring and summer was the high season, and then we had our shoulder season as well. And so we always would do a training as we led into spring, just reminding folks like, okay, we're entering the busy season. It's very tempting to like be busy because it's busy, but these sort of practices shouldn't change or stop or be altered. That just reminding folks of how important these sort of standards are, and at that critical moment, and then touching on that, every other weekend in our all team meetings, just to sort of remind, doesn't matter what your job is or what your role is, we're constantly greeting people. We're doing these sort of practices. So,
and I feel you, Michael, and I think it's really powerful that we are always in the practice of these practices. We always have a chance to consider what practices we are doing and whether it's formal training or one-on-one or individual. But it also is really powerful to think every time a person is in front of you, you have an opportunity. So how are you arriving in that space and how are you recognizing others in that space? And that's the art of hospitality. There are some radical hospitality maneuvers. I know there's been a couple books written over the last decade about radical hospitality in which your intention is to do something way beyond the training. But I will say that those are not the day in, day out examples. Let's first get to the level of compassion and care for other individuals in our space before we talk about radicalizing it for so many people. At Adama, the thing that we do, what we practice, we call loving warmth. That's what we call it. That's what shorthand. We don't call it hospitality. How are you showing up with love and warmth? Boy, my well for what loving warmth is really low right now. People will write in teams to each other and help each other before they get back out. Um, how can we help each other get to that loving warmth? Because for many people, they say things about our retreat centers, right? I wish I had more of that in my life. My time away from time when I was there, people really cared for each other. I felt like adult camp. I felt like I belonged. I felt like I built community. Um, That's loving warmth. That's hospitality. And any KPI, any COG is a great way to make sure that you're balancing your growth in achieving high levels of hospitality standards, but your day-to-day interactions are really what are the proof of who you are. There's a Jewish leader named Martin Buber. He's written many books. His most famous book is called I and Thou. And he believes that the moment of divine is the tiny interactions, one human to another, when we come together. That's the moment and spark. And so I'll tell you, for me in hospitality, the art of being in that moment and being present and providing that energy of belonging and gift of holding space, holding people, is what Martin Buber's talking about, is the moment to act in the divine. So whatever faiths or non-faiths or humanistic approaches your retreat centers may have, we as a Jewish organization hold on to the holy work of having people feel sacred and held in the space. And that is hospitality. Do you all have some customs or traditions that are similar? Alexander.
So I noted in the chat that I just started at Shadowcliff in a leadership capacity, but have known the organization for a long time, and so can speak to things that I have experienced and observed over time, which is a kind of this is related to what you're talking about, Eve. But there's this sense, and this thing you said earlier about belonging, that when people arrive, um, they're treated like members of our family, and there are little things that I don't know exactly what the training procedures have looked like. I don't know exactly how our
Mhm.
guest services and hospitality staff have been trained, but like things that have been practices are little things like guests get a tour of the like individual guests. Like retreat groups, there's a whole other orientation, but when there's an individual overnight guest that's just coming and staying for a night or two, everyone gets an orientation tour to the space so that they feel like they're at home. And so they're shown where our guest kitchen is, and they're shown the dining room, and just so they have a sense of, oh, I know the place now. I feel like I can navigate it. Um, and it's small, it's simple, but people have talked about how meaningful it is, and it's interesting to me how some things that can feel intuitive. I really appreciate the way you're talking about training. Because there's some things that feel intuitive to me that I don't necessarily see um, are intuitive to other people. Like I'm like, oh, that didn't occur to you to do this thing. Okay, that's why it's important for us to actually name these things and to establish sort of practices. And vice versa. There are also things that I may not think of or may not be intuitive to me or may not occur to me, that I'm like, oh, that's a really that I thank you for naming that and for saying that, because now I can integrate that and incorporate that, and I can understand how that can create that sense of, warmth, connection, belonging, that goes beyond just, oh, thanks for handing me my room key and telling me, giving me my linens. Um, so I don't know how much that lends to our conversation, but I thought I'd just go ahead and chime in.
How beautiful that every individual is seen one at a time. You don't have to be a collective in order to have value at your location. You don't have to be a quorum or a group leader or have a big contract in order to actually get the tour. Every individual is. I don't do that at my retreat centers. We don't have individuals who can stay overnight, but individuals for a group might come at many different times. They don't all get an individual welcome. So I'd love to learn more of how you're doing that. That's beautiful. And it may be a scale and volume
I
question.
think it's scale. We have 16 rooms across two lodges and then three cabins. So our capacity is maximum like 60. So when you're dealing with four times that amount, that might not be possible with the staffing that's available.
But I love it. It sounds really beautiful. Other folks have experiences that they want to share too. Andreas, your turn.
Yeah, I noticed, especially like at the center I worked before, like a lot of folks had mixed hospitality experience that they came in with. And,
Hmm. Hmm.
I think especially because we worked a lot of our retreats were silent Buddhist meditation retreats. And so a lot of it was, and I found it more through dialogue and questions and just reflection, but just how no's could be more helpful than yeses. Because I think in hospitality, we're trained to say yes, the customer is always right and it's always a yes. But just coming from that place of kindness, compassion, and the bigger picture. And, one concrete example, if a guest wants to leave in the middle of a silent retreat, it's actually quite disruptive. It could be disruptive to their own mind state as well as others around them. And so usually it's an ask to not leave. And if you need to leave, talk to somebody, check in with the teachers and all of that. And I've seen where the jump to, yes, let's make that happen. And like, no, let's slow down. And like you said, I think the buying time and the space is so valuable. And yeah, I've just found that really juicy of just like, hospitality versus like the retreat container and like where are these similar and where are these different, and just that kind of slowing down and no's are actually sometimes more helpful than yeses and kinder. But still with the outcome that's being desired, it's a little bit more of the how. And then I'll share one kind of tidbit that I found because I was there at the early stages and talking about the tours. But I found like in the beginning, a lot of our guests would arrive really kind of scattered because we were up in the mountains, and introduced a welcome walk into our orientation day. And so it's been interesting too over the years of just seeing how these like routines of arriving and leaving are very valuable to guests, and they're kind of ritualistic in a lot of ways. And so part of the kind of standard arrival day is a welcome walk where people like are toured around by a staff member, like touching the land and kind of some key marks and hiking spots. And it was interesting how simple that was, but it just became this thing over the years that like it was one of people's like favorite time. It was a time when they got to socialize and meet each other. It was a time when they got to kind of get a lay of the land, and how powerful that was just to like put their feet on the dirt and like physically walk around to really understand where they are. Yeah.
Yeah, we use words like grounding to tell people like, okay, they are feeling more sturdy and stable, but in a welcome walk, which isn't a phrase I use, so I love it. Sometimes we have like a opening site tour, but welcome walk is better. I like that. But what you're doing is literally grounding. You're really putting people's bodies in place, um, which is so powerful. We have so many different ways in our organization where we try to connect people to the earth, ways in which in our retreat centers we try to bring outside in, and sometimes where we do traditional things that would be inside out. And both our retreat centers have a lot of land, and there's a lot of them. One of the Jewish customs of dunking underwater is a really powerful thing that we do. In Hebrew, it's called mikveh. And it is purifying. Many different moments in different people's lives, they do this. But both my retreat centers have natural moving water to have an opportunity that most Jews who practice mikveh may never have done. They're in sort of the basement of a school and there's a cistern. How different it is to go out into a stream where there are beavers and plants and to do this ritual dunking in living waters is very powerful and grounding, but also a very new experience for many of our guests who have not had that as an opportunity before. And they feel like they come out a little different from it, which is really powerful as well. We're almost at 20 after. I know the session is ending in about 10 minutes, and I just wanted to give some space here for some reflections. Lots of what I presented today isn't the practice that you're currently doing as individuals or at your retreat centers. So let's just spend a couple minutes reflecting. Was there anything you heard today that you want to give more thought or may not work now, but you want to consider for the future, or you're ready to jump into and sounds like something you want to do right away? Why don't we just spend a few minutes here in reflection about some of these different areas? Let me know how you're feeling. And if there's anyone who hasn't had a chance to speak, Katie, Kat, Gail, if you're willing to come off um, your mute and come join us, we'd love to hear from you as well.
I was just typing and it's easier to speak. I am new. Lisa was here a little while ago. She is my friend and partner, and we are shopping for land. So this is all very, very new. So definitely ahead of where we are, but I'm personally have ADHD and it has to have context for me to remember things. So I'm soaking up jargon and context that I will be using over the next few years, and I'll continue to attend and do that. So learned a lot. I love the idea. I'm really liking the welcoming rituals and then also the closing and just knowing that I go to retreat all the time. And that is, I didn't think about it until you were all sharing, but that is it makes a huge difference in how I feel when I arrive, when somebody, and just coming alongside, showing me things, and it makes a huge difference. So I'm storing that and holding on.
Hi, this is Gail. I work at Shadowcliff with, can you hear me? I'm sorry, I didn't move my mic. I work at Shadowcliff with Alexander, and I find that um, that one-on-one communication and showing people around is not just beneficial to the guests, but to us as staff, because we learn a little bit more about them and we can share it. So that, if something is said like, I don't know, I've had a problem with my knee. Well, they didn't know that when before they came, but now we know, so we can be more attentive to, we have a lot of steps. So we want to make sure that they know the best way to walk, go down the gravel road instead of taking those stone stairs. Things like that. That's just a pulled out of my hat example. Um, but I have learned, like I didn't know anything about that 5-10 foot rule. And I think that is great and good to know, especially to teach our cleaning crew, because I work in guest services, so I'm down in the office and the front desk, but then the cleaning crew is up on the second floor in the other buildings, and I have no idea what their protocol is if someone comes by, other than to be friendly and warm, and all of our guests are family. So it's all about community. But I found this to be very useful. And I just texted Alexander and said, yes, we should incorporate some of this. So I'm glad it's a recording because I missed the first 20 minutes or so. But I was like, yes, this is good. And by the way, how do I get the recording?
Great questions. Thank you, Gail. I'm glad we got
You're
to hear
welcome.
you speak. In the chat is a link to the first half of this, because this is a two-part series I've done. So you're welcome to already get the first half of it in the link that Michael dropped. And I believe, Michael, is this correct? You'll be sending out an email afterwards with
Actually,
more links. How do they get today's link?
yeah, so what will happen is on the RCC website, there's a section called blog, and all of the recordings and a smaller write-up for each of these and any presentation will all be there. So you can find that link there. It takes you to the blog from Eve's last session. And if you go to the blog section, you can see everything that's ever been recorded there for you. It's like a great library to forward to new teammates or yeah, so it's there for you for sure.
Amazing. Thank you. I hope you all enjoy that. If you've not yet signed up to be a member of the RCC, this is an unsolicited from Michael plug that you do all take a moment at whatever level is comfortable for you to be a member. There's a sliding scale and a lot of options, so speak to Michael directly about it. But we find it very, very valuable to be in communication with so many other folks at retreat centers and to learn from each other. So I highly recommend it. And if this was useful for you, I hope that you will consider coming back Monday the 17th, in which we're having a community roundtable and an opportunity for more peer support in different ways. This is the end of my two-part hospitality sessions. There are other ways in which I'm more than happy to be available to folks. I will leave my email information in the chat, and I invite all of you to reach out to me. And should you ever be in Connecticut or Maryland, please come to either Isabella Friedman or Pearlstone and check out what we're doing. We also have hubs doing really critical work, two in California, one in Atlanta, one in Detroit, and one in New York City. So if you are in any of those areas, Adama would love to connect with you. But I just want to thank you all for being with us for these 90 minutes. I hope this hospitality session has been really useful. I appreciate the feedback and the opportunity for us to share and grow together. And I look forward to hearing from you all again. Alexander, if your hand is up, I will pass it to you before we sign off.
Oh, yeah, I just would like had some reflections on takeaways that you were asking, and I think
Mhm.
there are two. We're a seasonal lodge and retreat center, and so we're in the process now of actually hiring our seasonal staff, and we have this opportunity each year to begin again, which is can be challenging, but is also um, right now, especially as I'm new to the organization and looking at it as this is very timely. This is a very timely conversation as we think about not only what have our practices been and training and practices been, but what can we integrate into the staff that will be arriving this summer. So we use a lot of language, value-based language that I think is important and can be really quite powerful. But one of the things, and I said this a little bit earlier, but just that I'm taking away from this is what it means to actually get clear and specific about not just saying how do we treat our guests like family, but what does that mean? Because not everybody has the same relationship to family and what it means to treat people like family. So what does it mean to us to treat people like family? And then also the first half of the conversation, some of the more nuts and bolts of thinking through, okay, yeah, we ask our guests for feedback, but then what do we do with it? How can we standardize not just the collection of feedback, but then a process for like disentangling, and reflecting on where are there opportunities, where was something maybe that was unavoidable, and it's unfortunate that it happened. And we'll reach out to that guest and just apologize that it took place, but that where there are also opportunities for us to change our practices or think about our operational procedures or and then the food piece too. Meals are a really important part of what we do and how we gather. And we talk a lot about the magic that can take place when you just gather around a table. Um, but then thinking about, okay, well, what does that mean in terms of we're a nonprofit, we're working within a budget, we're scrambling to try to figure out like how to make these things. So what you said, Michael, earlier about your takeaway from your experience, really looking closely at these numbers and how that changed how you thought about both purchasing, but also um, the value proposition, and how you priced things. Um, those are kind of the two things that I'm taking away are operationalizing values. How do we actually be clear and specific about how we talk about what we do, and then the kind of nuts and bolts behind the scenes, the stuff that's not as juicy, but that is really important in terms of how how things actually how we're able to do what we do, in a sustainable way.
Mm. Thanks so much, Alexander. And how our RCC is able to do what we do is through the memberships. So if you haven't become one, I really encourage you to. If you have a neighbor retreat center that doesn't know about RCC, reach out to them and let them know. We want to have as many folks connected as possible. Eve, I'm so grateful for you as always. Thank you so much for all of these very tangible opportunities for us to increase belonging in our centers through these acts of hospitality that are actually not that hard to implement. So, thank you so much. Everybody, thank you for being here today. Love you. Hope you have a great day. Stay warm or stay cool if you're in a warm place. And talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks, Eve.